What do Falcons do? We rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, a show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Hard Dog, and a lifelong sports fan, coming back to you today with just a few thoughts on our future as we approach the rest of free agency here, as we look towards the salary cap. We know the salary cap is going to probably continue to go up at least incrementally every year. It had its largest jump this past year with, I think, over $20 million additional given to each team to actually use. Whatever's not used the year prior can be carried over to the year after that. The Falcons are going to be right up against the cap this year. Right now, as of this moment, we have about $6.5 million free. And that's going to all be used to sign rookie players. We may have to restructure some additional deals or cut some guys. As it's been brought up to me, Taquan Graham is a guy that this year might be on the chopping block, and there are a few others. Richie Grant is possibly on the chopping block just because of how much money we would owe him, and $4 million just to make some room. Lorenzo Carter's possibly on the chopping block. Not that we need to be getting rid of edge rushers anytime soon. And there's a few other guys that could be, Mike Hughes being one. Ogundeji makes a little sense to still be on the chopping block if we really need money. But I wanted to take a moment to really think about what are we going to do after the 2024 season. Who are the guys that make the most sense to potentially move on from after this year? And when I was looking at this, I was trying to think, who's going to have the biggest savings and the least dead cap overall? Because that's what you're overall looking at, is how much can you save? Because you're going to have dead cap if you end the contract early. It's never set up where all of that guaranteed money, even though it might be a 2-year deal in the case of Darnell Mooney, where he's getting $26 million guaranteed on a $39 million deal, that $26 million is not spread out evenly over the course of 2 years. It's spread out in chunks over the course of the entire 3-year contract. So it's not like you're paying him $13 million year 1, $13 million year 2, and $13 million year 3, with that last year being a completely optional year. He's got some guaranteed money no matter what, and that is a tool built into most players' contracts so that they are not left in the just grasping and really being hurting for money going into their final year. It gives them a safety blanket, and it's something that a lot of players do with their contracts. There's a few guys that are on their rookie deals here that, again, like Richie Grant, makes sense to maybe move on from him right now, even though we don't have a safety. Can we get anybody? I would have said pre-draft he was a guy that we could cut and potentially look for a safety. We didn't end up doing that in the draft, so we kind of were stuck with him. But let's look at post-2024 and think of a few guys here. So some of these guys don't have deals yet, and some of them do. But let's just say we get through this season, come hell or high water, make the playoffs, don't make the playoffs, win, lose, draw, doesn't matter. Let's look at the dollars and cents of this. And the first guy that comes up on the chopping block for me is Caleb McGarry. Caleb McGarry at right tackle will be on year 2 of his 3-year extension. He's gotten the bulk of his money last year and this year, and then he will not have very much left. McGarry at right tackle, if we are going to have Michael Penix be our starter for the future, I have made this argument time and time again. I didn't love bringing Caleb McGarry back. He is a very solid run blocker. He is awful in pass blocking, and I absolutely despise him as a pass blocking right tackle. And you are talking about a left-handed quarterback, so we need a very strong right tackle in pass protection to protect the blind side of Michael Penix, who is going to probably be pretty much a pocket passer. I don't see him running out very often with any significant success. We're not talking about a Michael Vick lefty here. We're talking about a pocket passing lefty. Talking about a Tua lefty, a previously injured lefty. So we're going to need somebody strong on that end. I don't think Caleb McGarry is the guy. Cutting him, the dead cap is only $2 million, but we save $14.5 million to cut him. That is at least part of a significantly better right tackle salary. Most great right tackles are going in the neighborhood of about $18 to $20 million. So cutting him and then having a little bit of extra wiggle room with some of these other moves allows us to either draft or hire whoever's going to be available at right tackle next year. That would make a lot of sense. So the next guy is I'm going to talk about twice because I think you have a way to get out of his contract after this year. But most likely it's going to be the year after. I don't think that we are going to have him go through his entire contract just because he costs way too much money. But that's Jake Matthews. I do not believe the Falcons will move on from him after 2024. But if we did, we would save $9 million, but your dead cap is going to be $12.55. But you're still not going to be paying him the entire $21+ million in 2025 if you move on from him at the end of the season. I'll go ahead and jump into 2025 because I'm going to talk about that as well, but he is the one specifically I want to mention that covers both gaps. If we cut him after the 2025 season, which again, I'm not saying we should, but he'll be 34 years old, almost 35 at that point. It depends on if he has shown any signs of regression. And again, at left tackle, he may start showing those signs. And he's going to be a significantly less important piece for pass protection with Michael Penix being a left-handed quarterback. So, Jake Matthews could get cut after 2025. We would only be a dead cap of $6.2 million then, but we save around $15 million. And again, I point out that money could go to pay another left tackle. We could get somebody younger. And again, the drafts haven't happened for those years yet. We're expecting some issue with Kirk Cousins tampering, but we'll see what happens. So that's my thoughts on Jake Matthews. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying it could happen. The next guy I want to talk about, going back to 2024, there's two more I want to talk about here. One is Caden Ellis, inside linebacker. We have Troy Anderson there. We have Nate Landman, who we're probably going to have to pay. And we just took another guy from Notre Dame to build out the depth there. So we're going to have inside linebacker depth, and we're probably going to continue to draft inside linebackers and get them for cheap, just depth pieces going forward. But you have Caden Ellis, who, if we cut after next year or let go, the dead cap is only $1.75 million. If you do it, then you also save $6.75 million. So again, not a huge sum, but that's a pretty significant chunk of money for him to cost us almost $9 million, $8.5–9 million on next year's salary cap for the actual cap to his cap hit there. So to save 6.75, not a terrible sacrifice to make. And then the final guy in the 2024, post-2024 season, again, nothing is happening now, all in the future, would be David Onyemata. We just took 3 defensive tackles in the draft. We took Rook Aurora, we took Brandon Dorlus, and we took Pogue out, or not Pogue, I don't remember his name, Zion Logue out of UGA. So I don't know what's going to end up happening there. I imagine one of those guys will end up being a practice squad guy, but the other two are definitely going to be positioned to be starters. I don't think that we end up cutting both David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, but Jarrett's a guy we got to talk about in a minute. But if we do move on from David Onyemata after the 2024 season, we save $10.5 million, and we only have a dead cap of $4 million. Moving on to 2025, there's only 3 additional guys besides Jake Matthews to talk about here. Grady Jarrett, the heart and soul of our defense, is a guy that's going to be on the chopping block, or at least a chopping block consideration going into the 2026 season, so post-2025. Because Grady Jarrett is going to cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $21 million if we keep him on the roster, we free up $15.25 million by cutting him and save and only have a dead cap of $4.125 by cutting him post-2025. So we're not in any danger of doing that this coming season, but after the next 2 years with Grady Jarrett, he's probably not getting extended. Again, he's going to be on the wrong end of 30 at that point. He's a guy that we'll see where his production's at. I imagine we will keep either David Onyemata with a re-sign because he will still potentially have 3 to 4 good years of football left. And I think we'll move on from Grady Jarrett, but we'll keep one and move on from the other. It makes more sense to move on from Grady Jarrett down the line just because of money and age. But I certainly hope he retires as a Falcon no matter what. The other guy, obviously the big one after 2025, so not this year, not next year, Kirk Cousins. It depends on who you ask. Spot Rack, which is who I'm using for all of this data, has him as a dead cap hit of $35 million post 2025. And that is if you include his roster bonus. If you take away the roster bonus, if we do it before the March roster bonus time frame, it would only be $25 million. But you're still going to save if you just say you keep him on the roster. You're not sure what you're going to do. He has 2 great years, and you're like, God, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep him? Are we not going to keep him? If you decide to keep him and cut him before June 1st, you're going to hit a dead cap of $35 million, and you're going to save 22.5. So you're still going to save a lot of money, but you're going to have a huge dead cap for that year. Doing it later makes a lot more sense. It's only $12.5 million if it happens a year after that for dead cap. So I do think at maximum Kirk Cousins' 4-year deal is actually a 3-year deal, no matter what happens. And I've already mentioned the other guy here that we talked about for the post-2025 draft or season, and that is Darnell Mooney. So again, his dead cap after the 2025 season is going to be $5 million, but we're going to owe him around $17 if we keep him. So it really depends on if he plays well or not. If he's playing well and Penix has a connection with him and we see that, keep him. Absolutely keep him. Don't get rid of him, but he's going to cost us $17 million, so we could potentially save 12 if we cut him prior to any roster bonuses or anything like that happening. But that's all I got for you. We're going to have an interesting offseason in the next few years. Every guy mentioned was a potential star for our team. I am most considering Caleb McGarry as the guy from next year. I don't know that we'll see a lot of other guys, but Caleb McGarry and Caden Ellis, I think, could both be casualties of next year's cuts. I don't think Grady Jarrett would be them, but Grady Jarrett going into the 2026 season, I think won't be on our roster anymore. I don't think Jake Matthews will be there. We just save too much money moving off of, and it makes too much sense with aging players to just go ahead and move off of these guys and try to find their replacements. Kirk Cousins, I don't know. We can potentially, if we cut all 3 guys, we're gonna hit a dead cap of about $50 million, but we're gonna save somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 as well, or a little more than $50 million. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough situation here. I don't envy Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris going forward, figuring out what you're going to do with your stars that you're already paying a ton of money. But that's all I got for you. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing. We've dug ourselves into a hole with the Kirk Cousins signing and then getting Michael Penix, but it is what it is. As always, guys, rise up.